it doesn't really matter too much what players that aren't any of them say. But it's still not a great look on the league in general. It's not a great look on the league. So Natasha Cloud posted this, and this might be the dumbest thing ever. First of all, we want team housing. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Absolutely. I would assume for hardship players, they have to allow hardship players. Just like again for G League players, for two-way players, if you're calling somebody up, you have to apply housing for them. But also, like the team housing is 1,000 between one.
The current WNBA collective bargaining agreement discussions have raised questions about whether all participants are approaching negotiations with appropriate gravity. While key figures including Brianna Stewart, Nneka Ogwumike, Brianna Jones, Elizabeth Williams, Alicia Clark, and Kelsey Plum represent the primary voices in these talks, certain public statements from other players have drawn scrutiny for potentially undermining the league's credibility. Natasha Cloud's recent social media post exemplifies this concern. Her demand for team-provided housing carries merit, particularly regarding temporary roster additions who face challenges securing short-term accommodations. Such provisions already exist in the G League for two-way and hardship players called up temporarily. The financial mathematics deserve consideration. Housing costs typically range from $1,000 to $3,000 monthly across 5 months.
So, like the team housing is 1,000 between 1,000 and 3,000 per month for 5 months of the year per player. So if they're going to increase your salaries by 200, let's say you're a minimum contract player, instead of getting 60 grand, if they're going to increase your salary by like 160 grand, but then you have to spend, depending on what city you're in, it could be 1,500 for 5 months, 6 grand less. I mean, like the NBA, like none of these top tier.
If minimum salaries increase substantially, say from $60,000 to $220,000, players would effectively lose only $6,000 from that raise to cover housing expenses in most markets. No elite professional basketball organization worldwide typically includes housing in standard contracts, though individual teams might voluntarily offer such arrangements outside formal agreement structures. The argument against mandatory team housing holds weight for certain situations. Younger players face particular vulnerability when released from rosters while locked into lease obligations that teams recruited them into signing. Urban markets present especially steep costs. New York housing could consume $15,000 across the season. There's also uncertainty about whether employer-provided accommodation counts as taxable income under American regulations, as it would in many other countries.
Like the NBA, like none of these top tier pro basketball leagues pay for your accommodation. Realistically, none of them do. And it's not going to be in the CBA, which means, but the reality is teams still might put players up. Like teams are still going to, if teams are allowed, if it's a choice for a team to put a player up, I think with the lack of a cost, every single team would if a player wanted that. They would, but that would be probably considered extra benefits. But this is the worst comment. Like I actually get not wanting team housing.
Cloud's commentary took a problematic turn with her closing demand, tagging the commissioner and calling for a girl's girl leader. This statement fundamentally misunderstands organizational structure. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert functions as a mediator representing ownership interests while facilitating player dialogue. Any commissioner consistently favoring player positions would face termination since owners employ them, not the players' union. Universal dissatisfaction with Engelbert among players and fans exists for understandable reasons given some of her public statements. However, her gender or personality bears no relevance to collective bargaining outcomes.
This is the worst comment. Like I actually get not wanting team housing. I do. Because especially if you're someone in New York, that is 15k basically. And at 15k, but I would assume also you're paying tax on the team housing. Is that not a BIK? Like if you were in Ireland and your team paid team housing, that would be considered salary, whatever the value of that housing would be. But I don't know how it works in America. But you can see this comment. This makes no sense for younger players, so the players get cut and stuck in leases instead of teams that bring in.
The housing discussion itself contains legitimate concerns worth addressing. If negotiations progress toward increased compensation, perhaps $1.3 million maximum salaries instead of the proposed $1 million, with salary caps rising from $5 million to $6.7 million, then housing arrangements become negotiable details rather than fundamental obstacles. Average salaries would climb regardless of specific housing provisions. The core issue remains that invoking identity politics, girls girl, in contract negotiations serves no practical purpose. Even replacing Engelbert with Cloud herself wouldn't automatically secure team housing provisions. Such benefits require genuine negotiation and potential trade-offs.
Caught and stuck in leases instead of teams that bring in replacement instead of the teams that bring replacement players, nor for the players in bigger markets. Yeah, I actually don't disagree with that comment. It's just this last thing. Let alone talking about player safety and safe areas. WNBA commish, we want a girl's girl. What the fuck does Cathy Engelbert have to do with this? And what the fuck does that have to do with anything? We need a girl's girl. What the hell does that do? Like, Cathy Engelbert's not the one making the CBA. Like, what the hell does that have to do with anything? Genuinely, what does that have to do with anything? I don't even dislike Natasha.
If housing represents a non-negotiable demand, it belongs in formal bargaining sessions, not Instagram commentary laden with buzzwords. This approach damages the league's professional reputation. While Cloud's housing concerns deserve consideration, teams will inevitably need accommodation solutions for players one way or another. Framing demands around finding a commissioner who simply grants every player wish demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of collective bargaining. The commissioner serves ownership while facilitating dialogue. Securing favorable terms remains the union's responsibility. The broader pattern suggests troubling priorities. Some observers worry that players prioritize maximizing short-term earnings over the next decade without regard for long-term league viability, knowing they can always compete in overseas leagues if the WNBA struggles financially.
Anything. I don't even dislike Natasha Cloud, but like, it's all these buzzwords they're using. They use random buzzwords. Like, oh, we want a girls commissioner. Why? Like, genuinely, what you should actually want as a commissioner is, you know, the commissioner is the middleman. The commissioner represents the owners, but it's the middleman that talks to the players. Like, if the commissioner is always on the player's side, they're going to be fired because they, ironically, are employed by the league, by the owners. They're not employed by the players. Like, I get it.
Recent commentary suggested players should consider foregoing international opportunities if genuinely committed to league growth, allowing extended domestic seasons with higher overall compensation. The reality appears to be that no salary increase would convince many players to abandon opportunities like Project B, which likely offers more lucrative terms than the WNBA can match. Consequently, this collective bargaining agreement probably won't restrict Project B participation. The league might successfully limit European competition since those organizations demand serious commitment, fans care intensely about outcomes, and lackadaisical effort results in dismissal. Unrivaled and Project B present less existential threat since players don't treat them with comparable seriousness.
Like, I get it. Every single player hates Cathy. Every single fan hates Cathy. I don't even disagree with that. Fair enough. Fair enough. Like, what some of the stuff crap Cathy's been saying. Absolutely understandable why everybody hates Cathy. Absolutely understandable. But this is kind of crazy. Like, she makes a genuine argument. And by the way, she makes an argument. I think when it comes to team housing, if it's at the stage where, I always say this, like,
the housing debate does merit resolution. Minimum contract players especially need accommodation support during the 5-month season. Perhaps any player earning minimum salary or joining on hardship contracts should receive mandatory housing assistance. The total cost approximately $15,000 annually.
I always say this, like, there's going to be, like, the players getting the salary they want. I still think the players are going to get paid more. I think the players are going to get paid more. I think the 1 million max salary, it's going to be more than that. That would be my opinion. And I also think that 5 million salary cap might go to 6-7 million. Like, I think that is something that is probably going to happen in the next 2 months. Like, I think the money's going to go up to maybe 1.2, 1.3 for a max, for a super max. Maybe 1.1 as a super max, or 1.2 as a super max, 1 as a max.
However, appointing a commissioner based on gender solidarity rather than negotiating competence accomplishes nothing. The league's struggles to gain mainstream respect stem partly from such approaches that prioritize rhetoric over substance. Professional sports operates as a business requiring professional negotiations, not social media campaigns built on empty phrases. Competent commissioners, ownership groups, and player representatives all share responsibility for ensuring long-term league viability while fairly distributing revenues. Current discourse suggests some participants remain more focused on immediate personal gain than collective sustainability, a calculation that may prove short-sighted if it undermines the league's future prospects.
$250,000 a year. for a sport that has never turned a profit, a sport that, let's be honest, until Caitlin Clark showed up, there wasn't no ratings and shit. Hell, most of these teams still can't sell out. You know, they're not selling out in Dallas. They're not selling out in Chicago. Oh, wait a minute. I thought the two biggest other stars in the whole league were, never mind. Oh, Rhodes, you're not supposed to bring up facts. But the point is, you get my point. All right? So now I've
An intriguing development has emerged regarding the latest collective bargaining agreement discussions, with revelations that the WNBA, whose ownership largely overlaps with NBA franchises, is proposing quadruple the guaranteed compensation in this newest agreement. Speculation suggests the Players Association may have strategically leaked information to front office sports to regain public support. Once the league begins offering 4 times current salaries, establishing a minimum annual compensation of $225,000 for a sport without profitable history, the optics shift dramatically. Prior to Caitlin Clark's arrival, viewership remained minimal, and numerous franchises still struggle with attendance. Dallas and Chicago venues aren't reaching capacity despite housing prominent players.
You get my point. All right? So now I get the notion this is being floated out. And the WNBA is wanting to yank away team housing. Now, I'm just going to keep it real. We know how this league gets down. What were the teams paying for here? Y'all paying for Big Brother / insert some reality show behind the scenes, you know.
Mentioning verifiable data apparently causes discomfort, but the facts remain clear. There's reason to believe this information was deliberately released, particularly regarding the league's intention to eliminate team-provided accommodations. Realistically, considering how this organization operates, questions arise about what teams were actually funding. Were organizations essentially financing reality television scenarios, monitoring players' collective living situations and personal activities? Players with endorsement deals and financial means already maintain private residences.
Insert some reality show behind the scenes, you know, what y'all's personal life all shacking up together look like. You know, now I think some of the players that have endorsements, et cetera, they all have their own houses, whatever. But somebody wants you to know, well, they're trying to take something away. Oh, and they're trying to start the season earlier. I don't know if that is their way of combating Project B by starting the season.
Someone clearly wants public awareness that the league appears to be removing benefits while proposing earlier season commencement. Whether this represents a strategy to counter Project B by advancing the schedule remains uncertain, though it would likely conflict with that league's conclusion. The WNBA has suggested a 6-figure maximum base compensation as part of the fresh collective bargaining agreement, though concessions accompany the offer. The organization has eliminated team housing from submissions presented to the Women's National Basketball Players Association, including recent proposals. According to multiple league sources who informed Front Office Sports, organizations have been mandated to supply players with seasonal accommodations since 2016.
Way of combating Project B by starting this season earlier, I think it would officially get in the way of the end of Project B, I think. So let's check this out. The WNBA has proposed a 6-figure base max salary as part of the new CBA agreement, but it's coming at a cost. The league has removed team housing from proposals submitted to Women's National Basketball Players Association, including the most recent several league sources.
The league has additionally suggested extending the season duration, incorporating an earlier commencement date anticipated to conflict with the NCAA tournament and potentially rival organizations such as Project B. Should they choose to interfere with competing off-season competitions, that remains their decision. Considering the substantial financial stakes involved with this emerging league specifically, resistance seems inevitable. The significant concern involves interfering with the NCAA tournament, which lacks logical justification. Future talent builds recognition through NCAA tournament exposure.
Basketball Players Association, including the most recent several league sources told Front Office Sports. Teams have been required to provide players with in-season housing since 2016. The league has also proposed lengthening the season, including an earlier start date that is expected to interfere with the NC2A tournament and potentially other leagues such as Project B. Okay. If they want to interfere with another off-season league, that's their prerogative.
Caitlin Clark's popularity stemmed directly from her performances in NCAA tournament runs with the Iowa Hawkeyes. Angel Reese gained prominence through LSU, while South Carolina continues producing stars. Women's collegiate basketball generates impressive viewership numbers, frequently surpassing WNBA ratings in various instances. Damaging relationships with the developmental pipeline seems counterproductive. Questions arise regarding draft logistics. Would newly selected players immediately commence competition without transition periods?
That's their prerogative. It is. Now, do I think they're going to get pushback on that? When you consider how much money is at stake in this new league in particular, yeah, they're going to get pushback. I have a massive problem with them interfering with the NC2A tournament. That doesn't make any sense. It does not compute. Why would you do that? Because a lot of your future stars are building their...
The timeline appears problematic. However, distancing from college football and NFL competition makes strategic sense, and predictions suggest this partly aims to separate from professional and collegiate football scheduling while preparing for expansion to 50 or more contests. Currently at 44 games, increased from 40, the league desires 50-game seasons. The time frame remains uncertain, though within 3 to 4 years seems plausible. The subsequent collective bargaining agreement will likely feature 50-game schedules.
Because a lot of your future stars are building their brands in the NC2A tournament. How the hell do you think Caitlin Clark got to be so popular? Her runs in the NC2A tournament with the Iowa Hawkeyes. I mean, Angel Reese, LSU. That is South Carolina. In case you have not noticed, guys, college basketball ratings with the women, the ratings are pretty damn good. And in a lot of cases, they're higher than the...
Training camp commencement could advance to mid-March, sources indicate. The present 44-game regular season extends from mid-May through early September. The 2025 WNBA Finals concluded October 20th. One source noted the proposal lacks logical coherence. The WNBA declined comment.
Damn good. And in a lot of cases, they're higher than the WNBA. So I don't know that they want to bite the mouth that feeds, or whatever that saying is. Bite the hand that feeds. Yeah, something like that. You get my point. And how does that work with the draft? They get drafted, they immediately come in and start playing without I don't know. That kind of doesn't make any sense.
Monday's reported latest proposal emphasized salary enhancements featuring a base maximum compensation of $1 million plus performance incentives potentially reaching $1.2 million, elevated from previous $800,000 to $850,000 figures. Projected average compensation exceeds $500,000, with minimums surpassing $225,000. The salary cap would increase from $1.5 million to $5 million. Under the organization's most recent submission, the salary cap would expand alongside league and franchise revenue without predetermined targets. A source knowledgeable about negotiations indicated this approaches player demands more closely. An agreement appears increasingly achievable.